It is Father's Day, and I know this is a time where a lot of us come together and celebrate our fathers. I was sitting on my computer listening to, watching an episode of Fresh Prince, and it was the episode when his father, had abandoned him or he was trying to come in his life, but then he was repeating the same patterns. And so as I'm sitting there, I started, having weird feelings again about my father. I turned it off. I was like, I don't want to hear that. It's just, I've been healed from that. I've moved on. I've let God be triumphant in my life in that areas. So then this morning I woke up and I was looking through something again, and I read something again with fathers, and a tear came to my eye. And so I realized, I said, I said, God, this is just one of those things where I'm not wounded by it, but I still carry a scar from it, because the reality is, who doesn't want to be able to have a relationship with their father? Though I have a relationship with my natural father, I've had a very minimal relationship with my natural father. About 3 years ago, I was at a church here in Texas. And I remember I was going through some things. The transition here was kind of rough and different things. And I remember I was talking to the pastor of that church at the time about it. And of course, he tried to diagnose me and say something like to the effect that I was putting God in my father's place, which I knew where he was trying to go, but that's not what I was dealing with. Because I understood that, God some years ago had showed me some things in the natural about how I had a hard time submitting to him because of I didn't have my natural father. So I never learned to submit to my natural father. So it made it hard for me to submit to God's way. I was transitioning. Things weren't working out the way I thought they were. I was getting frustrated and I couldn't understand. As I was praying about it, I asked the Father why, what's going on? And so what God has showed me was that though I had forgave my father when I was 21, I was still dealing with some of the effects of fatherlessness. I had forgiven my father before I became a Christian. My father died when I was 21, and I was on his bedside when he died. He died of AIDS in 1994. And I remember when I saw him, he came up to me crying. And I remember him standing there, and he kept saying to my grandmother, his mother, he kept saying, that's my firstborn son. That's my firstborn son. He was just crying, and he looked real sick, and the family had tried to keep it away from us that he was dying, which I didn't understand why. And so right then and there, I realized that I can no longer hold a grudge towards my father anymore. This is something I had to deal with. And so I chose to forgive him, not even being a Christian. I just chose to say, you know what? I have to move on with my life, and I don't want to hold that over his head, especially if he may die, so I forgave him. So here, you fast forward to here it is, 2013, and I'm having this hard season in my life, and I couldn't understand it. Well, what God showed me was that subconsciously, not conscious, I wasn't aware of it, but what I was trying to do was prove that I was going to be a better father and a better provider than my natural father. But what it was in my mind, what I thought I wanted my father to be for me and my brother and my mother. When I felt I couldn't do that for my family, then I felt like less of a man. And that wasn't the case. I felt like I wasn't being a good enough father. And that wasn't the case. I was beating myself down. And so he took me to a scripture, I think of some Philippians, where it says, think on these things, whatsoever things of good, or whatsoever things of pure, or whatsoever things of good report, think on those things. He said, Jerome, look what's around you. Look at your family. You've already superseded what he has done. So I said all that to say that sometimes our fathers do fail us in life. They do. Sometimes we as fathers, we fail our children. But if you have a chance to make it right with your father, make it right with him. Forgive him. Realize that, especially if you're a Christian, if he was in sin, these are the consequences of sin. This is what happens. Now, we have to go to God through the word to get the healing that we need from those wounds. But, wounds end up becoming scars. This morning, as I was sitting there and I had this tear in my eye, and I'm like, I'm not hurting over my father. I've healed from that experience. I don't trip on my dad. Even when I was going through it a few years ago, I couldn't understand. I'm like, man, I haven't tripped off my dad in years at all. But God was trying to show me, no, there's something there still that I'm trying to fix and work out of you. And so I remember I showed my wife this scar I have on my leg here when I was in the second grade going to daycare. I remember falling on these steps. I'll never forget that daycare. It was memorable. I remember going up these steps, running from Coretta King School, I think it was, or King School on the east side of Stockton, going to that little daycare center. I was running up the steps, and them steps were old. Back then, they probably concrete. Now, who knows, but they were wood. And I fell, and I had a big old piece of wood stuck in my leg, and I ended up getting like 6 stitches for it. Now, I can look at this wound today, and though I can touch it, feel it, there's no pain to it, but I still remember exactly what happened, how it happened, and different things. So let this be something that could probably minister to your heart, that though you still bear a scar, it reminds you, but you don't carry the wound anymore. You got to allow God to really heal you, because I can sit here and I look at my family and I look at the great things that God has taught me over the years, how he just gracefully just showed me how to be a man through experiences. I mean, some of the great, when I look back at the men that were in my life that were kind of compensating for what my dad wasn't doing, I thank God for it. I had a cousin that I looked up to. He taught me how to dress, taught me how to groom myself. I had other uncles that I watched go to work, that built some work ethic. I even had a summer I lived with my father where he had to actually discipline me and whoop my butt, and it hurt. You know, I thought my mom was the chief whooping person in the household, because he beat my tail, and I'll never forget that. You know what I'm saying? And so I've had some experience with some men in my life. You know, there was my grandfather, my father's dad. You know, I watched him take care of my family. So, hey, fatherlessness happens, guys, but it's not the end of the world. It's not the end of your life. Take what your father didn't give you and capitalize on it. And that's what most of us do. That's what most drives us. Because if not, you know what happens? We end up repeating the same cycle. We end up becoming absent fathers in our homes. We end up repeating certain cycles of neglect and certain things in our home. And our kids still see what you experienced growing up.